Hello, my name is Yongjun Jung. Today, I am going to talk about reparations for Black Americans. My thesis statement is: how can America atone for 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, and 35 years of racist housing? Number 1. The theft of black-owned land was not unusual in our history. An example is Clyde Rose and his family. He lived with his family and was 10 years old in 1930 in Mississippi. His father owned a 40-acre farm with animals. He lost his properties to the authorities when they came and insisted that Mr. Rose had to pay $3,000 in back taxes. Mr. Rose didn't have the money and he didn't have any protection under the law. He and his family lost everything and had to become sharecroppers. Documentaries have reported 406 victims of land theft and over $24,000 acres of land stolen from Black Americans. Number 2. 40 acres of Confederate land and a mill was ordered for black families by Civil War Union General Sherman. However, President Andrew Jackson reversed this order, a missed opportunity for reparations for Black Americans. Number 3. The New Deal by President Franklin Roosevelt introduced two policies to help Americans during the Great Depression: the GI Bill and Social Security benefits. Blacks were unable to benefit from the GI Bill even though they fought in World War II because of the racist housing policies. About 60% of blacks were also unable to benefit from Social Security because it excluded domestic and farm workers. Number 4. Redlining came into existence in the 1930s. The Federal Housing Administration (FHA) was created in 1934. The FHA put together a system of maps that rated neighborhoods. High-risk neighborhoods were redlined, and the FHA would not back house loans for these areas. Redlining affected the entire mortgage industry. This basically kept Black Americans from getting mortgages for buying homes. Black Americans had to get loans from unscrupulous lenders, which was unjust and very costly. During the 1930s to the 1960s, many black people could not get a legitimate and fair mortgage. An example is Clyde Rose when he was an adult with a family and a job and living in Chicago. He tried unsuccessfully to get a legitimate house loan. Number 5. After the Supreme Court ruled against racial zoning in 1917, cities like Chicago still found a way to discriminate against black homeowners wanting to live in white neighborhoods. In the 1940s, Chicago, through certain covenants and restrictions, was segregated with about half of all the neighborhoods off limits to blacks. Public housing units built in Chicago in the 50s and 60s were almost all located in these all-black neighborhoods. These black neighborhoods had lower property values than white neighborhoods. This is just another example of black disadvantage imposed by white people. Clyde Rose never had a fair mortgage loan, and while he lived in Chicago and kept his house, he needed to work 3 jobs. Number 6. The wealth that America accumulated was not only from labor provided from slaves, but was also from slaves being a property asset. According to Harvard historian Walter Johnson, the sale of slaves generated much wealth. There was a slave economy that generated millions of dollars from loans taken out to purchase slaves. Sales of slaves as property, insurance policies written for loss of profits in the event of a death of a slave. Today in 2020, black families have about 10 times less wealth than white families. This increased wealth for white families also relates to better health, better education, financial safety net, and a better retirement. Number 7. Reparations are not a new idea. The U.S. has a history of reparation. Native Americans have been given land, money, programs, and benefits to compensate for exiling Native Americans off their land. Japanese Americans that were interned during World War II have also been given money by U.S. government. The U.S. also helped Germany make reparations to the Holocaust survivors. Number 8. John Conyers, Jr. Congressman, put forth a bill H.R. 40 to study reparations for the past 25 years. However, the bill under both Democrats and Republicans have never made it to the House floor. Number 9. U.S. reparations is not a popular idea with the American people. In 2019, a Gallup poll showed that only 29% of Americans thought that reparations to black people who are descendants of slaves is a good idea. In 2002, the poll showed approval at only 14%. Number 10. There are some critics to the idea of reparations for descendants of enslaved black Americans. Criticism include, how do we ask descendants of immigrants in America who had nothing to do with slavery to pay for the reparations? Who would receive reparations and how much would they receive? Reparations would result in a more divisive America, says critics. Number 11. Other critics believe that America has paid reparations in the form of social and economic programs such as affirmative action. Also, many thousands of people of all races fought and died for the eradication of slavery in the Civil War. Many white people supported the civil rights movement, which helped make it a success. Many laws and court decisions have passed to result in more equality in America. Lastly, some argue that the wealth today is only a sliver of the wealth that resulted from slavery and Jim Crow laws. Most of the wealth today comes from innovation, inventors, immigrants, and entrepreneurs. Number 12. Cowell wants there to be more focus on studying the issue of reparations and how it could benefit black Americans. He wants reparations studied to figure out how reparations could be accomplished. Cowell doesn't agree with his critics about reparations. He believes the critics should at least want to study the issue of reparations. And here is the video that is related to reparations to black Americans.
Reparations are the act of making amends to someone or a group of people who have been wronged. Germany paid billions of dollars in reparations to Holocaust victims or their families and to Israel after the Nazi atrocities of World War II. And in 1988, the U.S. paid more than 80,000 Japanese Americans who were held in internment camps during World War II. They each got $20,000. But African Americans have never gotten reparations for their 246 years of slavery. Lawmakers have introduced bills in Congress to study reparations and whether it's possible, but most have never gotten very far. In 2008, the House of Representatives issued an apology for slavery. And in 2019, bills to study and develop a proposal for reparations were introduced into both houses of Congress. But the legislation languished. Recently, there's been renewed interest, like the Harriet Tubman Community Investment Act, which the Maryland General Assembly is considering. The Brookings Institution says it could be a possible blueprint to what reparations could look like for black Americans. Under this act, the descendants of slaves in Maryland could receive the following repayments. Tracing the descendants of slaves will be one major challenge. Unlike victims of the Holocaust and Japanese internment camps, there are not a lot of paper trails for the descendants of slavery. The census didn't count black Americans until 1870, and unlike immigrant groups who have their history documented at Ellis Island, there's no central historical database for the descendants of slaves.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learn about reparations for Black Americans from this video. Thanks for watching.